some good cooking.
And hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horsemen podcast. It is myself and Ricky, a two-man duo once again, and, well, we had a guest in line, but she ended up canceling at the very end because she wasn't feeling too good, but we'll get her in for the next episode. I'm Akaya. She'll be on here for episode 70, but wish her well. And, well, we got a hell of an episode for you guys today, and that is Top 10 Riff Masters of Metal. This list was difficult because there are a lot of great riff writers in metal's history.
Yeah, there are a lot, especially for me being the de facto guitarist. You know, it was difficult.
Mm-hmm. So... So yeah, I came up with the idea for this episode because it's like, after I was watching Become Denied on YouTube doing like reactions to Watch Mojo's top 10 metal guitarist lists, and how he was kind of more or less emphasizing like you need to have like good riff writing to be considered a great guitarist. It's not just about who can do the shreddiest solos, which... We'll eventually do like a top 10 guitar solos in metal history video as well, so... But we're here to talk principally about riff writers, like people who have written great riffs and know how to make them catchy and or memorable, so... Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we get into the actual lists themselves... Let's go through some honorable mentions. Now, I got quite a hefty list of honorable mentions here, and these were ones that I thought about putting in the top 10, but I thought that there were 10 more important riff writers to me. Starting off, Michael Lockerfield from Opeth. Just because, like, when people think of the term progressive metal, they think, oh, it's all guitar wankery and there's no feeling to it. Well, there are a lot of exceptions to that, and Michael's definitely one of them. Really, when you boil Opeth's riff writing down, at least in their death metal era from Orchid through Watershed, the riffs were a lot more simplistic compared to, say, Dream Theater. Like, they're a little more doom-laden, a little bit more, like, classic death metal. Even, like, in the early albums, like the first two, there's even some black metal in there, too. But eventually, especially with, like, My Arms Your Hearse through Watershed, you got more catchy riffs. And, man, he knew how to drive those riffs home right into your mind. And if I were to pick a standout riff that Michael has written... it would probably be the riff to Demon of the Fall.
Yeah.
Just because of how epic it is and how brutal it is.
Now evil.
Yeah. And that was the song that pretty much signaled where Opeth was going for most of their career. But my next pick, I'm wearing the shirt. It's a Mastodon guy, Bill Kelleher from Mastodon, because he's the one who pretty much writes all the riffs, while Brent Hinds does the solos. Bill is the mastermind behind riffs, and talk about with Mastodon's evolution, starting off more of like a prog sludge band, then straight up prog with some like radio moments here and there too. And he kind of has a bit of a style similar to like Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath in terms of like crushing riffs that feel a little simplistic but memorable. If I were to pick a standout, it would have to be Blood and Thunder. That main riff in Blood and Thunder is one of the most powerful riffs of the last 20 years in metal. So yeah, I'd have to go with Bill Kelleher. Next up, Kirk Winstein from Down and Crowbar. I mean, hell, that guy is just a library of riffs. And he, along with Crowbar, along with the Melvins, pioneering what we know as sludge metal. But it was definitely more Crowbar that took it to the heavier length, whereas Melvins took it in the more experimental route. But with Kirk, he could write hardcore riffs, he can write groovy riffs, and he can write doomy riffs too. If I were to think of like a standout riff that Kirk has done, it would probably be... Oh, fuck. I even forgot the name of the damn song. To Metal Archives I go, because I know the riff, I just can't remember the name of the song. It was My Agony from the first album, that main Doom riff. Ooh, that dun, 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 dun. Like, that's just soul-crushing. So, yeah, I have to have Kirk. Next up, Zack Wilde, Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society, because, I mean, not only does he write some great solos, he knows how to write great fucking riffs, and throughout his whole career, whether he was in Ozzy or doing his thing in Black Label, he was able to write some catchy fucking stuff. My standout riff from Zack would be Crazy Babies from No Rest of the Wicked from Ozzy, because that was the first time you heard Zack, was courtesy of that song, and it was a hell of a riff and a hell of a song to really kickstart his career. Back when he was poofy-haired and well-groomed before he became the berserker that we know him today.
Next, unglammed-sized.
Yeah, when he went not so glam at him. Well, hair.
Yeah, hair-wise.
Yeah, hair-wise, he just laid down and grew the big beard.
Which is weird seeing old photos of him without the beard. I'm like, oh my god.
Like, and from the late 90s on back. Yeah. Doesn't even look like him.
No.
My next honorable mention, kinda in vain with Opeth, John Petrucci from Dream Theater. While he's more known as a wacky, wankery solo guy, but even his solos have feeling to it. Even with technical execution, but he can write great riffs too. After all, it's like Dream Theater, especially on stuff like Images and Words, Awake, and Train of Thought, you can hear some of the heaviest stuff you could ever hear for a prog band. If I were to choose a standout from John, it'd have to be Pull Me Under.
Yeah.
The main riff, that dun 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 dun. After all, that was the song that broke Dream Theater out into all around the world, so it would have to be Pull Me Under. Next up, I got my only duo on my list. Nocturno, Culto, and Fenris from Darkthrone. Even throughout their whole career, whether they were death metal, black metal, punk, classic metal, doom, they knew how to write great riffs, and they were able to take influence from the past, but make them sound like they wrote them themselves, and didn't sound like carbon copies. Like, they're able to make everything sound fresh, especially their last 5 albums, Circle the Wagons, Underground Resistance, Arctic Thunder, Old Star, Eternal Hails. It's like a nice natural progression in the way they write their riffs. And even in the old days, like Soulside Journey had some cool technical riffs. Blazing the Northern Sky has some great ones. Just over the years.
Has some good ones too.
It was mostly tremolo wankery, but that's neither here nor there. Panzerfaust had some great ones.
Oh yeah.
Ravishing Grimness has some great ones. Sardonic Wrath, I could go on, and this one's difficult because there are a lot of standouts in Darkthrone's discography as far as riffs, but probably just because they were able to basically take influence of a classic riff and turn it into something of their own. Hardship of the Scots, where they basically took the riff from AC/DC's Let Me Put My Love Into You and turned it into like this classic blackened doom metal riff.
The only thing that they changed from that was they added a bit of the palm muted.
Palm muted and changed the ending of it a little bit, and made it sound gritty and doomy, which was really cool.
And the Shadow Over Horns is another good one too.
Yes. I could even go with the opening riff for Mon Tinker's Seat off of Sardonic Wrath, because it kind of felt like a Celtic Frost Opeth riff. There's a lot. Stylized Corpse from Circle the Wagons, that opening riff sounds like a death riff, which is pretty cool. And they even have some riffs that sound like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Like hell, Sacrificing to the God of Doubt off Sardonic Wrath, that opening riff sounds like late 70s Judas Priest. So there's a lot, but Hardship of the Scots, just for the fact they're able to take an AC/DC riff and turn it into a doomy, blackened classic metal tune. So can't go wrong with either one, Fenris or Nocturno. Next up, our boy Max Cavalera, Sepultura, Soulfly, Cavalera Conspiracy, Killer Be Killed, Nail Bomb, you name it, he's been
Name
there.
it.
And hell, the new Soulfly album that I checked out today and reviewed, which you can check out that video. But yeah, just killer riffs, whether they're thrashy, groovy, brutal, melodic. If I had to pick a standout in Max's repertoire of riffs over the course of his career,
Arise.
You could go with Arise. I'm actually going to go with Dead Embryonic Cells.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Just because that's a little more catchy. So yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton from Max. And then my final honorable mention, and he almost made the top 10, but Scott Ian from Anthrax and SOD.
Mm-hmm.
After all, one of the best rhythm players in metal history, and whether it's Anthrax, SOD, or other projects that he's done like Motor Sister, or even appeared on other albums like the latest Mr. Bungle album he was on doing riffs. So, if I had to pick a standout, it's not even an Anthrax riff. March of the SOD. That dun 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 dun. That's just a chug-a-thon. And it was at one point the Headbangers Ball theme song for a long time. So if that doesn't show the influence, I don't know what will. So March of the SOD would be my pick for Scott. And those are my honorable mentions. Ricky.
Well, I have 10 honorable mentions. The first one, Richie Blackmore. Kind of a bit of a neoclassical person. If there was a riff, I mean, he's been in Deep Purple, Rainbow, you name it. He's been all over the place. If there was a riff I could choose, Smoke on the Water is one of them. Even though
that would have
to
be the one.
Repetitive, annoying riffs, but as a guitarist, it's one of the first songs everyone learns on guitar. Even though you go to Guitar Center, everyone's trying to play Smoke on the Water, which is kind of annoying at times. But if there was another one I could say from a bit of underground, Stargazer. That riff of Stargazer is fucking, or even, I don't know, maybe the Gates of Babylon or Long Live Rock and Roll. Those are great
Man
riffs.
on the Silver Mountain.
Or Since You Were Gone. That riff. It's a good riff too. Next honorable mention is Dave Murray and Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden. Of course, there's a lot of riffs that they've written all over the years. The one that tops of my head is Run to the Hills. Maybe The Trooper.
I would say The Trooper would be the standout riff.
Yeah. If there's another one that I can mention, probably be... probably maybe somewhere like maybe The Wicker Man. Even though Janet Gers is involved, but still pretty good riff. The the next up, Slash. I mean, it's Slash in terms of lead guitarist. He's one of the best. But in terms of rips, he has some good rips once in a while. Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah, that would be
probably their best song ever to date. Sweet Child of Mine. The infamous story of how he came up with the intro. He would just...
It was a joke.
It was a joke. He just playing with the guitar, and Axel was like, play that again. And I like the fact that at first, when I first heard that riff, it kind of runs me up. I'm in a circus. I mean, at first, I thought it was this is a circus song, and then, of course, builds up, and
as
it's an
it
amazing
progresses,
song. Yeah. Civil War is another good riff that he has written. November Rain, kind of. I mean, it's an epic song. I mean, there.
Paradise City.
Paradise City, yeah. Next up, John Petrucci, a man that I like to call the human octopus because he goes all over the board. I mean, I've seen him. I've never seen him get live. I've seen the videos and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's a fucking octopus because he's playing like it could be just at the very top of the tempo and then go all over the fucking place. I feel like his hands his fingers are gonna fall because I'm like, my god, dude.
And the guy's in his mid-50s.
and he still plays like a fucking badass.
I mean, that new Dream Theater album's chock
Oh
full
yeah,
of great riffs and
but
leads.
song wise, Pull Me Under, probably the standout song, or anything from Metropolis Part 2 is outstanding too. Next up, Andy LaRocque. I mean, when I think of Andy LaRocque, of course you think of King Diamond automatically. But a lot of people what don't think they'll think of
Don't
Death.
remember he was on Individual Thought Patterns from Death. Well,
Yes.
he didn't write riffs, he was just there doing leads.
Yeah, but again, I mean, in terms of Andy LaRocque, I mean, he's one of the most underrated guitarists out there. Of course, anything from Abigail, anything from Them, anything from Conspiracy, anything from hell, anything from King Diamond is gold from Andy LaRocque. Next up, Adam Jones from Tool. Again, another one of those guys that I'm amazed he has written some of the most memorable riffs in the past few years. I mean, the one to stand out is probably Sober, Lateralis, maybe for Inoculum from the new album. Is there some great riffs? Schism is another great riff.
Well, Schism, I more think of Schism as a bass thing from Justin. I think that is more of a bass thing that the guitar.
Oh yeah, follow. I mean the way that it starts.
Kind of the same with NIB from Black Sabbath. Kind of the same situation.
Next up, Scott Ian from Anthrax. Another underrated guitarist that doesn't get the respect he deserves.
I think he does get enough credit. It's just does. Maybe he gets too much sometimes.
But in terms of riffs, Out in the Mosh Pit, Indians. I love that riff from Indians. Another one that would be kind
There's a bunch of great SOD riffs. March of the SOD. Milk.
Antisocial. You're antisocial. Next up, Bill Clester from Mastodon. When I think of that, even though it's kind of a bit of an underrated one, The Hunter, because The Hunter was my introduction to Mastodon, and I always kept that riff, the whoa.
Oh, Curl of the Burl, that song.
Yeah, but lately, anything from the new album is so good. Even from Emperor Sand.
There's some great ones on Crack the Sky.
Oh yeah, there's
Blood and Thunder, that main riff.
Blood and Thunder. Ooh. Another one that's gonna be like out there, but I just put it for the heck's sake of Joey Ramone from the Ramones, even though he's not really metal.
Punk.
He's more of a punk guy, but he has some decent riffs. Not the greatest, but there were some decent riffs. Of course, Beat Street Pop, to death. They've been written that riff for the longest time. And my last honorable mention, and I know, Levi, you're going to have him on the list. I hope you do have higher on the list. Dave Mustaine. I mean, Symphony of Destruction, Holy Wars, Through My Darkest Hour.
There's a ton.
There's a lot. I mean, Peace Sales. I could go on and on and on and on. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
All right, and now for the top 10 itself, starting with my number 10. Probably not going to be on Ricky's list and wouldn't be on a lot of people's list, but he was important for extreme metal riff writing. Tom G. Warrior, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, and Triptychon. After all, it's like, and even Fenris said it best, it's like when you hear his riffs, they sound like they shouldn't make sense, but they somehow do.
Yeah, I feel like with Tom G. Warrior,
he had the more stripped down approach.
Yeah.
To it. Yeah, and was one of the pioneers. He and Tony Iommi both pioneered like the swinging riff. And if I had to pick a standout for Tom Warrior as far as the riff go, Dethroned Emperor would be one of them. Circle of the Tyrants would be one.
Big Ratchet Screams, that riff.
Yeah. Trying to think of some other great ones. Inner Sanctum has some great ones.
Anything from Manos Diest, anything from that.
Even Vanity Nemesis has some awesome riffs. Like The Name of My Bride. That would be a great top one for me. But if I had to pick the real standout, I'm actually going to go Procreation of the Wicked. Because there's some really cool riffs in there too.
Yeah.
So
at least you don't have any from the Cold Lake session at the top.
No.
Unlike some people that we know.
Jammin' John. But and then even like Hellhammer, he had some cool riffs. Really, the standout one for me would be Messiah. And then there's a bunch of great Triptykon riffs.
Oh yeah.
Probably go with Shatter for Triptykon. But overall riff that stands out is Procreation of the Wicked. My number 9 is Eric Peterson, Testament. I mean, one of the best thrash riff writers ever. And really, no matter what he did in Testament, you was going to get some great riffs, no matter what. Mm-hmm. After all, he kind of follows a similar vein to another guitarist that we'll talk about much later. Kind of was like the junior version of him. If I had to pick a standout, Into the Pit would be up there. Over the Wall would be high up on the list.
Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, Alone in the Dark would be one. Practice What You Preach.
Yeah.
Souls of Black. That would be a really high up there one for me. And then as far as, and even like recent stuff, like the riff to Night of the Witch off the new album was great. I could go on and on, but if I had to pick the catchiest standout riff, Into the Pit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a one-time your theme, I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. My number 8 is the first of 2 death metal guitarists in the list. And he, along with the other guy, you could make a case for being high on the list, Trey Azagtooth from Morbid Angel. After all, it's like, he writes some of the most chaotic riffs, but some of the catchiest riffs, too. Like, if I had to pick the real standout, it would be the opening riff to Fall from Grace, off of Blessed Are the Sick, that dun 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 dun. I mean, and that song and that riff is evil too, but Immortal Rights could be one. Mm-hmm. The Doom Break in Invocation of the Continual one has a great riff. Enshrined by Grace, even though the production's really muddy. God of Emptiness.
Oh yeah.
Where the Slime Live, that would be another top-notch riff. But for me, the standout would be Fall from Grace, just because of the catchiness and the evilness of that riff. My number 7, you may not think of him much as a riff guy. You think of him more as a lead guy, but he wrote great riffs too. Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne. Mm-hmm. After all, I mean, he was like the successor to Eddie Van Halen, but in the metal realm. But despite his classical roots in terms of his leads, he was able to write some crushing riffs in his own right. Like, for me, the easy standout, the opening riff to Suicide Solution. That is a catchy, fun riff. Even Mr. Crowley, great riff. Crazy Train. I could go, like Flying High Again. Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Really, anything off the first 2 Ozzy albums is golden in terms of anything he touched. May he rest in peace. Gone way too soon. Speaking of someone gone way too soon, my number 6 is another death metal legend, the death metal legend, Chuck Schuldiner, Death. After all, I mean, again, kind of a similar vein to Trey. It's like they both equal great riff writing and great lead work. But Chuck, I think, takes the cake in terms of the greatest death metal guitarist of all time because of his outside influences, taking influence from classic metal, prog, but still making it catchy. Like, was able... Basically, Death was... Even though they're the first death metal band, they were also the first prog death metal band, the first tech death metal band, arguably first melodic death metal band to some degree, because a lot of his riffs had a sense of melody to it, sense of brutality, and a sense of catchiness. And there are a ton of great death riffs that he wrote that I could go with. I can go with Pull the Plug. I could go with Sacrificial. I could go with The Philosopher. I could go Lack of Comprehension. There's just so many.
Evil Dead.
But I think I'm going to go Pull the Plug as my standout from Chuck. My number 5, another one gone way too soon. Jeff Hanneman, Slayer. Some people may think, well, why isn't Kerry King on the list? Well, Kerry King's not much of a riff writer. He's written
more
some
of a
riffs.
lead.
He's more of like the guy who writes a lot of the leads, and not even all the leads. And he writes some riffs, but not all the riffs. Bulk of what made Slayer memorable was Jeff's writing. And Jeff, I mean, and also the better lead player out of the two, because he actually played with more feeling as opposed to the Willy wah that Kerry does all the time. It fits for Slayer, but not for anybody else. I'm sorry. Or maybe Morbid Angel, but I digress. But Jeff, when it came to his riff approach, he took some influence from his love of hardcore. And if I had to pick a standout for Jeff, it would be the mid-tempo break in Angel of Death. Or Raining Blood would be up there too. But I'm going to go with the break in Angel of Death, or that. I'm going to go with Angel of Death. Number 4, Ricky had it in his honorable mentions. I don't know why. He should be higher on your list, but that's neither here nor there. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth and Metallica. I mean, Dave, he, along with another guy we're going to talk about in just a little bit, pioneered down-picking and doing it fast and doing it precise, and how anybody can replicate it is beyond me. But Mustaine, I mean, he co-wrote riffs in the first Metallica album, and even co-wrote a couple riffs that were on Ride the Lightning. But if I had to pick a standout, it's a toss-up actually between Symphony of Destruction or Wake Up Dead. That the spider chord. He invented the spider chord, which then again you heard that riff kind of done on the song Ride the Lightning, but done in a different way. But I would go with Wake Up Dead as the standout for Megadeth. Dave's riff writing, for me at least. Number 3, another one taken from us way too soon. Dimebag Daryl, Pantera. Phil Anselmo said it best. When they were writing, why not make every riff the money riff? And again, countless riffs you can go for when it comes to Dime's writing, because he was able to write, like, his phrasing was great, articulation on his leads were great, but was able to write dominating riffs. Domination would be one. But for me, I know a lot of people would go with Walk, which that would be up there too, but for me, best Pantera riff, the 2 main riffs in Cowboys from Hell. Either or, whether it's the opening riff or the verse riff, it doesn't matter, it's appropriate. Now to the top 2, and these 2 should be obvious, and if anybody else is making this list that doesn't have these guys at the top, you're crazy, because these are the 2 greatest riff writers in metal history. Number 2, James Hetfield, Metallica. He has to be on your list. If he's not, then get out of here. Because, say what you will, people want to talk all shit they want about Metallica. For what reason, I still don't get it to this day. But you can't deny the greatest rhythm writer in metal history is Hedfield, or best rhythm guitarist in metal history, because he's essentially like the Eddie Van Halen, the Randy Rhoads, the Yngwie Malmsteen of rhythm guitar, because the fact that he can play as accurate as he can and downpick as fast as he can with that right hand and sing without even looking at the fretboard hardly at all, that's incredible musicianship.
It's difficult. Trust me, it's difficult.
Yeah, and the fact that he can do it so fluidly and not even bothering to look at the fretboard too much, and he's looking out in the crowd while he's playing and singing, that's not easy to pull off. Like, even Sammy Hagar will say that James blows him away every time he sees Metallica live, and seeing James be able to do that. And of course, like I said, the greatest right hand in terms of down-picked thrash riffs, and guys like Eric Peterson, Gary Holt picked up on it not too long after. Hell, Gary Holt should have been in my honorable mentions now that I think about it. If I had to pick the standout riff that James wrote, it has to be Master of Puppets. That chromatic pattern. And it's, for me, the best Metallica riff, period. So, Master of Puppets will be my standout. And James Hetfield, if he's not in your top 2, you are nuts. Which leads us to number 1. Obviously, it's Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath, the creator, the godfather of everything. And given what and most of us know already, but for those who have been living under a rock, which is probably 2 of you, and you're both idiots. But back when Tony was on the verge of becoming a professional player at like 17, 18 years old, goes to work for his final day of work at the steel factory, puts a piece of sheet metal in the press, takes off pretty much the whole tip of his middle finger and a little bit of his ring finger on his fretting hand, which is his right hand because he picks with left hand. But he never gave up, and he made fingertips out of plastic bottles, liquid soap, wax, and sanded down to fit his fingers, and then play with thicker strings and downtune early on. And he was able to write some of the greatest, not just metal riffs, but rock riffs of all time. Mm-hmm. If I had to pick the standout, there's so many. This is the one where you could just pick any riff he's written and you wouldn't be wrong. But for me, I'm going to go with Symptom of the Universe, because that's arguably the first thrash riff of all time. That dun 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 dun. That's a hell of a riff, and the heaviest Sabbath riff, in my opinion. So, I mean, Tony Iommi, the godfather of metal. Black Sabbath, the godfathers of metal. If he's not at the top, get on the hell out of here. But I digress. Ricky.
My number 10 is the man, the myth, the legend, Zack Wilde. Who would have thought that this scrawny little kid would later become one of the greatest,
muscle-bound, berserker, crazy motherfucker.
Yeah. Would become one of the greatest guitarists, living today. When it comes to his guitar playing, I feel like with the whole Pantera reunion thing, he was the perfect choice to put him as the replacement, because Zack Wilde is an individual who just doesn't write riffs for the hell of it. He actually wants to write riffs to mean something, make them epic, make them go what the fuck. And in terms of riffs, I mean, there's so many good ones. I mean, it can go from Ozzy, from No More Rules, or anything from the latest Zack. Black Label Society album. It spreads some good riffs, and it depends on when you grew up with Zack Wilde. But with the Ozzy stuff, it's pretty good. It just depends. But Zack Wilde for sure has to be probably in your top 10 or even top 20. Guitar riffs. On number 9, Randy Rhoads. No one, well, I don't want to say no one, but before Randy, there was not as many people who introduced the classical side of guitaring.
Aside from Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. Aside from Eddie. But before that, nobody really decided to put his classical love of classical music and try to implement that into his guitar playing. I mean, a perfect example of that is probably the D's little intro loop that he did on the Blizzard of Oz. I mean, it's so neoclassical, even to the point that a neoclassical teacher who studies classic music and recognized the importance and the precision that Randy had on classical music. Mm-hmm. But besides that, I mean, another song, of course, Mr. Crowley's a great one. Crazy Train's a good one. The way that Randy wrote riffs was unheard of at the time, because, again, nobody before him tried to implement neoclassical into the guitar playing. Even the solo from Mr. Crowley is so out there that to even me, I can't play as fast or even close to Randy, but my God, it's so good. And it's sad that Randy left us so soon. I mean, if Randy would have still been alive, can you imagine the riffs he would have written later on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, man, it would have been crazy. Number 8, Jeff Hanneman from Slayer. Again, another guy that we lost too soon. Kind of the I want to say he was kind of the secret weapon of Slayer because he wrote the majority of the riffs. I mean, a perfect riff that always stands out is the riff from Hell Awaits.
Yes.
Or even something like from Seasons of the Abyss, or maybe something from like there was
South of
another one that I
Heaven.
had. South of Heaven, that or even Mandatory Suicide. That's another great riff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, again, even though Carrie was mostly known for riffs, I mean lead riffs,
Mm-hmm.
Jeff always tried to kind of have the balance between Carrie's solo, even though Jeff would do solo at times. He was trying to make them a bit of a balance because you can't have one without the other. So it's Jeff. Number 7, the only duo I have in my list: KK Downing and Glenn Tipton.
I had them
You
on my list at one point.
Yeah, you cannot have both Glenn and KK without the other. And the reason why I chose them too is because you can make the argument for Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, but KK and Glenn were one of the first dual guitarists out there. There might have been some other ones, but never to the point
But
that
not to the point where they would do lead trade-offs and
exactly
co-write riffs.
they will both trade off riffs, lead riffs. Sometimes one would play the riff, but the other the lead, and vice versa, depending on the situation. But there is a song that I can honestly say to me stands out the most: "Victim of Changes," or even "Hell in the Electric Eye," or "Hell, Painkiller."
Breaking the Law.
Breaking the Law, probably the most infamous riff.
Their most
Um,
famous riff, yeah.
yeah. There's a lot you can go with Priest in terms of KK and Glenn. And like I said, one of the pioneers who will later go on to inspire bands to have not just one, not just two, but not just three guitarists later on.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Dimebag Daryl. Same thing I said about Zack Wilde applies to Dimebag, but with Dimebag, it was something of a I mean, this is a guy who at first, remember, Pantera was a power metal band, which a lot of people don't
Glam
know.
metal. Glam metal.
Glam metal with a bit of a power metal. I mean, his love for Kiss, because he loved Kiss, which you could easily put Ace Frehley on this list too. I mean, in terms of rhythm guitarist, he loved Ace Frehley to death, and he wanted to implement what Ace did in his guitar work, but implement his own writing. And he was a virtuoso on guitaring. I mean, the riff from Cowboys from Hell, that riff alone, just went there. Even Domination. I mean, if you've seen the live version of Domination did in Russia, the crowd.
Yeah.
It's sad that he's no longer with us, but what can you do? Now to the top 5. At number 5, bit of an odd one, you might think. And the reason I added him is because even though he's mostly known for leads, once in a while he can have some good riffs. Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, I know. Eddie Van Halen is mostly known for leads, but in terms of guitarists, Eddie Van Halen is like he's a god amongst guitarists. I mean, one of my favorite riffs he has written probably has to be "Running from the Devil," and even though it's mostly bass from Michael, but I mean, come on, it's Eddie Van Halen, or also maybe "Ain't Talking About Love," or anything from the first Van Halen album was so good.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go more underground, you can go something from maybe 1984. You know, but I digress. Number 4, Chuck Schuldiner from Death. After seeing Left to Die live and some of the band, well, not really seeing Ross and I'm forgetting his fucking name,
Terry.
play some riffs from the Leprosy album and from Scream Bloody Gore, I began to appreciate that Chuck was really ahead of its time. You're talking about a guy who wrote riffs, who later inspired technical death metal, progressive death metal,
melodic death metal,
melodic death metal. I mean, the riff alone from Pull the Plug is a perfect
like a
example
Death
of a.
Doom riff almost.
It's a perfect example of a band who wanted to be more progressive, but without the whole
Wankery.
technical thing. Yeah, the whole that Pull the Plug. I mean, listen to that live; it's so good. But to me, the standout track, Evil Dead, that riff, that heavy, brutal riff. I mean, I was like, that's why they call him Evil Chuck for a reason. That's why he's the godfather of death metal. At number 3, I gotta have Angus Young. It was an obvious I was gonna have Angus Young in my list. I know, Levi. I know. I'm being biased here. I mean, Angus Young was the reason why
not really metal.
I know. But in terms of the time, I mean, he had some heavy riffs.
True.
At the time, I mean, Angus was my inspiration to pick up a guitar. Hells Bells was the first song I learned on guitar and was the first riff that I mastered on the guitar. But if you go more, even though I've heard the argument, oh, ACDC write the same repetitive songs. Yeah, you're right.
But it works.
But it works. I mean, the riff on Let Me Put My Heart Into inspired Darkthrone to play that infamous, song, The Hardship of the Scots.
To play it on Hardship of the Scots, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to show you the riffs that both Angus and I could have added Malcolm as well to the list. You know what? Fuck it. I'll add Malcolm as well because Malcolm deserves the same amount of respect that Angus has. They both wrote riffs that stood the test of time. Highway to Hell, TNT, Dirty Deeds, For Those About to Rock.
Back in Black.
You Should Run Along. I could go on and on and on and on and on. At number 2, the riff master himself, James Hedfield. I mean, Master of Puppets, or Horsemen. Is there anything more I can say about that?
Nope.
Move
on.
And number 1, it's the obvious choice. When we thought about this episode, he was the first guy that I had to put on immediately. Mostly, I think the whole metal community can agree in terms of this guy. Without this guy, metal wouldn't be what it is right now. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Tony Iommi. Warpigs, Children of the Grave, the title track Black Sabbath,
Iron Man,
Symptoms of the Universe, Iron Man, Warpigs, Electric Wizard, Heaven and Hell,
Headless
God
Cross.
Is Dead, Upon the Cross. Just throw a dart at Tony Iommi, and every riff is great. And for people to say that Tony Iommi didn't help metal, that's bullshit. He was the one who helped create metal. I mean, and he was one of the few guys
by accident because of circumstance.
Yeah, and besides, at the time, there wasn't really much left-handed guitarists. Before that, probably Hendrix was the only one.
Maybe the only big one was Hendrix. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you saw him perform with the guitar instead of playing like this, you knew you had something special right there. Because not a lot of people can play guitars picking with their left hand and grips with your right. It's kind of hard. Usually the other way around. But with Iommi, what he did was, of course, the accident he had, he tried to find a way to make his tips work. And the one thing that I forgot to mention, that Iommi began to work with much, I don't want to say thinner guitar strings, but more, not as thick, because it would hurt his fingers. So he decided to kind of change the strings to make it more to his liking, which, in a way was both a blessing and a curse, because eventually bands would kind of have that inspiration, but then we get some shitty bands to kind of win more bullshit, if I have to say so myself. But, I mean, it's Tony Iommi. I had to put it number 1.
So now to construct the final top 10. Safe bet, Tony and Hedfield at the top.
Yep, at the top. Number 1, number 2.
Then after that, I'd say Dime goes to number 3.
Dimebag.
4, probably
Randy.
I'd say Chuck. I'd say Chuck at
Chuck,
number 4.
Yeah, Chuck.
Randy at 5. Mustaine 6. Let's see.
KK and Downey. We gotta add KK and Downey.
Yeah, I had them on the list at one point, but I took them out in favor of Peterson.
Yeah, we gotta have KK and Glenn.
KK and Glenn. That's 7. 8.
Jeff. We could go with Jeff at 8.
Jeff Hanneman at 8, and then now the final 2. I mean, if there's really anybody that was on my list that wasn't on your list that I would love to make a strong case for, and that would be Max Cavalera. Because he kind of followed the footsteps of Hedfield a little bit, but went a little bit more gnarly.
I mean, what about Zack Wilde?
Or no. Trey from Morbid Angel, I think, is more deserving of being up there. Just because he's pretty much on the same par as Chuck.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think... I
mean, what about John Petrucci?
I'll throw you...
John Petrucci?
Yeah, Petrucci would have to be up there. Yeah, Petrucci.
He would have to be there, so we're missing one spot. I mean, it's between Calavera,
Trey or Cavalera, or Zack Wilde.
Or Scott Ian.
Or Scott Ian, yeah. It's between those 4. So between Scott, Max, Trey, and Zack.
And Andy Larocque.
You know what? I say let's give it to Scott.
Yeah, let's give it to Scott.
I'd say let's give it to Scott because he is up there along with Hedfield as one of the best rhythm players. So let's go Scott.
Yeah. We basically have everyone from the big 4. American thrash.
Yeah. So our final top 10 of Riff Masters of Metal according to the Horsemen podcast. Number 10, Scott Ian. Number 9 is John Petrucci. 8 is Jeff Hanneman. 7, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing. 6, Dave Mustaine. 5, Randy Rhoads. 4, Chuck Schuldiner. 3, Dimebag Daryl. 2, James Hedfield. Number 1, Tony Iommi. So there you go. And of course, there's some other ones that in the chat that got brought up. Yeah, like I brought up Gary Holt briefly. Corthon as well. John
I'm not sure about Corthon. Well, that's an iffy one with Corthon.
John Schaefer. Great riff writer on Iced Earth. Despite what people may think, who gives a shit? He didn't do anything wrong. Fuck you all. But now King Magpie brought up Alexi Leho. I don't think of him much as a riff writer. I think of him as more of a lead guy.
Yeah,
he's kind of like the melodic death metal version of Yngwie, kind of.
Yeah.
Same with Yngwie. Like another guy, Boss brought up Yngwie. Again, not a riff writer to me. He's more of a lead guy. Same with Alex Skolnick. He's a lead guy. Dave Murray, yeah, probably he could have been up there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Trying to think who else.
Jakey Lee.
Jakey Lee would have been another one.
Jakey Lee for his 2 Ozzy albums, he did. Let's see.
Of course, the guys from Cannibal Corpse.
Particularly, probably Rob.
Probably Rob
or Jack Owen.
Yeah.
I could also have gone with. Could have also gone. Oh, and you know who I think is a very underrated riff writer? Wolf Hoffman from Accept.
Yeah.
He could have been on my list.
Eddie Clark, Fast Eddie Clark.
Awesome. Bill Steer, Carcass, Napalm Death.
Yeah.
He honestly should have been in my honorable mentions now that I think about it.
Who else? We could have...
Trevor Paris from Obituary.
Yeah.
He's a great riff writer. Could have went with Mila Petroza, Creator.
Yeah. Another one. I'm trying to see here too.
Kenny Hickey, Typo Negative.
Yeah.
That's another one. Let's see. Kind of going through my CD collection. See if I can find
stay with me.
Others. Robert Vigna from Immolation, because he was one of the pioneers in death metal for atonal riffs.
Yeah.
Just out of control. Actually, John Gallagher from Dying Fetus. He's an excellent riff writer. He can mix technicality and catchiness with like hardcore hooks.
Yeah.
Terrence Hobbs.
Yeah.
Terrence Hobbs, Suffocation.
Who else?
Vivian Campbell, Dio, early Dio stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Jim from Slipknot, or maybe even
Mick from Slipknot.
Mick, yeah.
Nick Anderson, Entombed, and the Helicopters.
Yeah.
After all, a lot of people forget. It's like, yeah, you had Uffe and Alex on guitars for Entombed in the classic era, but those early albums, Left Hand Path and Clandestine, Nick Anderson was the main songwriter behind those riffs.
I mean, Brian May, even though there's more rock at times. How about this one, Ishan?
Yeah, Ishan, Emperor. And solo work. Dan Swano.
Dan Swano. Infernus from fucking name, Gorgoroth.
Nurgle, Behemoth.
Nurgle.
Oh, and shit, I had another one in my mind just now, and now it's slipped again.
Who else?
I tell you another underrated riff lord, Matt Harvey from Exhumed, who you saw with Left to Die playing guitar and vocals.
Yeah. Yeah, he, my God, he could actually fulfill. He was one of the few people that
he can replicate Chuck's style perfectly.
Yeah.
Listen to Gruesome, which is basically a death tribute band.
The way he sang was, oh my God, he almost looked like Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
In a way.
Shit, there was another one. Oh, Dino Cazares from Fear Factory.
Yeah. Carlos Casero from Quiet Riot had some good riffs this time.
John McEntee from Incantation.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. Mark Morden and Willie Adler, Lamb of God.
Yeah. I mean, I'd even make the case for even Paul Landers from Rammstein. Or even Richard.
Yeah. Peter Tattegren, Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Oh, Anders Neustrom from Catatonia and Bloodbath. There's another underrated riff lord. Tommy Victor from Prong and Danzig. Billy Graziati from Biohazard is an underrated riff writer.
There's so many. I mean, there's a lot.
Even the Hoffman brothers, Eric and Brian, for the early Deicide stuff. They were great in their time. Yeah, we could go on, and in fact, we will keep going on and on. The guys from Bolt Thrower, I forget their names off the top of my head. Let me. I think Barry Thomas and Gavin Ward.
I'm just gonna say Juha Ravu from Swallow the Sun. Whew.
Eric Daniels, Paul Bayans, Asphyx. Let's see.
What's his fucking name?
Shit. Another underrated guy, not just in terms of riffs, but also an underrated lead player, Tommy T. Barron, Coroner. Even though he's maybe a little more known for his lead work, because he was like the Eddie Van Halen of thrash, but he wrote great riffs too.
Yeah. Andrew Crahan from My Dying Bride.
Greg McIntosh, Paradise Lost. And kind of mirroring Tony Iommi, his same being a left-handed player too. And his stuff in Volunfire was really good too.
Yeah.
For like almost like HM2 Death Doom. Oh yeah, and when you brought up Andy Larocque, how about Hank Sherman and Michael Diener, Merciful Fate?
Yeah. Matt Pike, High on Fire.
Yes, Matt Pike. He should have been an honorable mention too.
Yeah. There's so many. There's a lot. To be honest.
There's a lot. Kim Thale, Soundgarden.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Cantrell. How did I forget Jerry Cantrell?
Wow.
Jeez. Yeah, I knew we was going to forget a lot of big names. Jerry should have been in my honorable mentions, too.
Yeah.
Jeez. Fucking cut my nuts off and roast them over an open flame, why don't you? Jeff Waters, Annihilator.
Bill Campbell, also.
Yeah, Motorhead. I mean, jeez.
Wurzel, at times, but not really.
Zacky Vengeance, Avenged Sevenfold. There's a lot. There's so many. We can just keep this train a rolling. Train kept it rolling all night long. I'm still looking through my CD collection to see if there's any. Oh, Eric Rutan, Morbid Angel, Hate Eternal, and now Cannibal Corpse. I mean, now we're just going off the rails, just trying to think of other great ones.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's unwieldy. It's all unwieldy at this point. But I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up this episode. So apologies we didn't get Kaya in, but she will be back for the next episode, which, speaking of which, our next episode, we are going to do a better job than Watch Mojo ever could. We're doing the top 20 greatest metal songs of all time. So, yeah. Watch Mojo, that's for you.
Yeah, I still remember when I shared that with the group, and we were like, what the fuck? You know? I haven't seen that video in a while, and I think even Scott did a reaction to that video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's gonna be...
But we're hoping to maybe do that episode either this upcoming weekend or the weekend after. Really depends on if Kaya feels better by then. She was going to be on today, but she ended up getting sick, and she even admitted that she didn't want to do it unless she brought her A game, which kudos for sure. So, but we'll get her on for the next episode for sure, for episode 70. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this week. Horns high, and we'll see you in the next one.
Jackass.